Hey everyone, welcome to Kobudo and K9s. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about the Nunchaku and why it's a horrible weapon to choose in today's society. First off, let's talk about why it exists in the first place. There's some competing theories on why Nunchucks were even used in the first place. One is that it was actually used as a harvesting device to harvest rice and soybeans. The other is watchmen used to use them almost like click sticks to create noise for the community should there be approaching issues coming to the village. And the last one that exists is that it could have been used as a horse bit in the horse's mouth to help steer the horse as a ancient form of a horse bit. Whatever it may be, if you think about the time and the era that this was used, it was used for another purpose. And during the time in feudal Japan when bladed weapons were taken away from villagers, they had to get a little bit creative with their weaponry. So at the time, it would have been a good weapon to use over nothing, essentially. And so they used what is available to them, what could be hidden out of sight that didn't look like a weapon, that was potentially had a primary purpose but then could be weaponized. And it was like taking anything that's in your environment, which, you know, if you use Krav Maga or other types of forms of self-defense, it's taught that you can find things in your environment to help save your life. In ancient times, nunchucks were those things. If you're in a situation where somebody's coming at you with, you know, a sword, and otherwise all you have is your arms or stones or something, a horse's bit or hell, a stick on the ground, anything's going to be better. And so, it was formalized and weaponized based off of that. It makes sense. That's human nature. That's why it exists. Weapons in those days had to be used secretly, otherwise there could be serious punishments, including death. So you create a tradition, you create a mystique around it, and it entered into traditional Kobudo culture. And it perpetuated through tradition and was repopularized by Bruce Lee. But those that consider this as a weapon need to look at the historical reason why it exists. So if you think about today's society, there's absolutely no practical use for this outside of training.
Nobody's gonna go out with me. Who would? I don't even have any good skills.
What do you mean?
Like nunchuck skills. Girls only want boyfriends who have great skills.
Shadiversity says, yeah, if you want to use nunchucks, you'll remain a virgin. He's wrong. These look cool. They look badass when you're using them. They're fun to use. And, they take a certain level of coordination and dexterity to use. The nunchucks, out of any weapon that you're going to use, probably has the most feedback when you screw up. Shadiversity talks about this. He talks about weapons that he uses in the past and that, most of them he hasn't hit himself with. Anyone who's tried nunchucks has hit themselves. There's no question, it happens all the time. You're going to get bruises, and it's immediate feedback. And so, as a prominent weapon, to use this as just an essential weapon, you probably are more likely to injure yourself than injure the opponent. Now, there might be a single circumstance where you'd want to use nunchucks if you already had them on you and the other person was unarmed. Then you've got a tactical advantage by extending your range and increasing your force and general momentum. If you were to be in a fight with nunchucks, I would say that you'd be better off using them almost like a Cali stick and striking them combined like this. If you're striking an object, you're less likely to have it ricochet off and come back and hit you. Or if the object moves and you're coming through with a full strike, you're less likely to hit yourself. But if you have the nunchuck, loose and open, you're more likely to potentially miss your target and end up hitting yourself. I still think it has an essential purpose within Kobudo, and But would I bring it to a fight? Probably not. Absolutely love nunchucks. They're fun to do. You can impress people with them. They're very showy. And hell yeah, if this is all I have for a fight, I'm gonna use them. But it's not likely that I would use them in a traditional nunchuck form. I would use them more like a stick. Even though you're gonna increase the centripetal force by using it lengthwise versus together like this, you actually have more mass striking like this, so the force is probably just as good or higher. I haven't done the math on this, but you know, just intuitively, I feel like using the strike like this has less liability than the strike like this, plus you have more mass being hitting at the same time. So let's demonstrate a couple hits in two different forms. We're gonna do open chuck, and we're gonna do closed chuck. We'll take a look and see what it's like. I haven't actually done a comparison here, but my intuition's telling me that Bob's gonna get a little bit more damage like this.
Nunchucks.
Probably gonna scare my dogs. They're sitting right underneath Bob, but you know, Kobudo and canines, they're here. All right, let's do this. One more. We're gonna do this other method here that I was talking about, where we're gonna hold the chucks closed. I'm gonna come across, I'm gonna try to hit either with both together on the side, which will probably end up, because these are round chucks, they'll probably end up slipping. So this may not work. And then the second, so I'll do that 3 times, and then I'm gonna try to hit it with both at the same time. So it's definitely more blunt force, and we'll see how that goes. Definitely slipped on the first one there. You probably heard the chuck slip off. Slipped again. Slipped again. Okay, now we're gonna try to hit coming across on both chucks. Emma's excited. You wanna try? Okay. Emma's ready. She believes in this technique. Here we go. All right, missed the top chuck on that one. Let's try again. One more time. All right. Well, there you have it. I don't know if either of those were even better. They all seemed kind of clunky to me. I certainly would. You know, when you hit with it, it's because it's rounded, it just wants to move around. I still think that regardless of it moving around, I'd still rather hit it like this. And that's because if I'm coming in and this guy ducks, you know, basically it would be like going full force, but I'm missing him. You know, if my stance is off or something like that, I'm coming down into my leg, into my groin. Heck, if it deflects off of something, it, you know, could whip back and hit me in the head. Certainly not. It certainly loses the precision the moment it hits something, unless you have clean intention of follow through. And if it doesn't hit the way you're expecting it to hit, that intention and precision and accuracy is going to change. And the reason why that is because the string exacerbates the various angles of freedom on this. You've got multiple directions that this thing can go. And it creates a dynamic that is exceptionally tricky to predict. You lose a lot of control in your weapon. You have no control over the tip of this unless it's static or in dynamic movement. And these are like engineering terms. I'm an engineer, so I like looking at this from an engineering perspective. But the reason why you have accuracy is because it has momentum in a direction that it's going. If that direction is altered that accuracy is going to change. And you know, it's like multiple pool balls hitting each other. It almost is like a chaos theory. You can't predict exactly where it's going to go. There's a couple things that maybe I'd rather do instead. I might rather try to kick the person, keep my distance a little bit more, maybe use the nunchuck as a, you know, just a distraction obstacle, potentially use it from that perspective. It's going to freak some people out, but those that are combat ready and combat aware are going to be a little bit different when they view somebody with nunchucks. If I walked into a fight and started chirping somebody and saying, all right, let's do this, let's fight, and you know, they're a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or Muay Thai fighter or something to that effect, they're going to get inside me pretty quick. And you know, I've got nothing at that point if I'm relying solely on this. If I want to keep distance, you know, I'm probably going to use my feet more and potentially, you know, try to keep them backed up if I'm in a position of defense. You're not really relying on the chucks at all in that case. There is one other movement I could think of that adds a dynamic to the nunchucks that you actually don't get when you have them loose, and that is using the butt end. And now that I'm thinking about it, I kind of feel like that could be one of the best ways to strike with this, almost using it like a knife. But again, it still rolls around on you. It's a little bit wonky when you use it. But yeah, I mean, just doing that, I'm getting more force. The most useful method for using nunchucks in a fight is exactly how nunchucks are not supposed to be used. All right, here we go. Yeah, that was pretty good. Probably the best approach is knife strikes. Temple strikes, solar plex, groin strikes, inside nervous system, ribs. You know, you're giving yourself a little bit of distance, and you're increasing the point of force. So, surprising myself right now, that's pretty much the only practical weapon use for nunchucks, in my view, is as mimicking a knife with closed chucks. Let's talk for a second about nunchucks as a defensive weapon. There's really nothing to say. They can't be used for defense all that well. I mean, there are blocks you can do. You know, you're blocking shots, but there's so much give on here that, you know, even if you're the strongest person in the world, there's so much give in these strings that I just don't see it. Like you're relying on the ability to control force with this movement, and you're not bracing it with like a single stick, you know, where there's counter forces between the two arms. There is no counter force here, so you're constantly you just have one thing here. Like, I can easily push down on this arm. This arm is struggling to even remotely maintain that force. Side might be a little bit stronger because you've got the ability of the entire body behind it. Down blocks probably are going to be your strongest. You got your whole body there pushing down, but again, I think you'd probably be better off, unless they have a weapon, relying on more traditional hand-to-hand combat techniques. Even the most proficient martial artist in Kobudo, using nunchucks, would probably be killed by the least proficient swordsman. Plain and simple. So, why would you take this? It's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. You just don't do it. It's a bad idea. train this, work your forearms, and then bring a sword. So am I going to stop using nunchucks just because I probably wouldn't use them in a real fight weapon situation? No, I'm not going to stop using them. For all the reasons I stated here. They help with my dexterity, they help with my situational awareness, my mind-body connection, my hand-eye coordination, and they're fun. I'm going to leave it to Shadiversity to enlighten you more on why this maybe isn't the most practical weapon. You can find his link here. In my next video, I'm going to talk about the bow. The bow, the humble bow, is one of my favorite weapons. It's so versatile. It's accessible. It's still useful. And I would argue that maybe you could bring it to a knife fight and have a pretty good chance. I'm going to show you the most practical strike with the bow, why it's extremely effective, and why everyone, even the very basic starter with the bow, can master this technique. Subscribe, hit like. I've got more videos coming. Turn those notifications on. We'll see you next time.